Good day, filmmaker Jake Rademacher of Brothers at War and now Brothers After War. How are you today?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm so thrilled you're here. I love the film. Brothers After War is a genuine, heartfelt, true to life story about your family, and then you reach out to other families. I'll let you describe it, but before anybody like, oh, military story, I wanted to let people know. So the Gary Sinise Foundation made the largest purchase of tickets to so people can go watch this film. So can you tell people A, what the film is, and then B, if they want to see it, when they can be able to see it?
Oh, those are both great questions. So in Brothers After War, I literally traveled the world, 4 different continents, to reconnect with my brothers and 10 friends I made in Iraq. In 2005, 6, I went in again in 2007, I spent 3 months in the war zone. First in Mosul, Iraq, out to the Syrian border, eventually in the Triangle of Death between Ramadi and Fallujah. I embedded with my brother's LURS units, but also Marines, snipers, Iraqi army, and the Marine advisors that were advising them. I got into combat with these guys. I told their story from the front lines, and also the home front, because I am a military family member. I'm a brother. And so the whole film it's a brother's love for his other brother and willing to go to a war zone to tell his story. And this film is special because 15 years later, I reunite across the world with 12 of them, my 2 brothers and 10 others. And in because maybe I was following them in their job then, I want to cut to what they're doing now. So if I was out with the Syrian border with a paratrooper and he tells me there's nothing like going at the earth 150 miles an hour, today we cut to him. He's a professional skydiver, and I have to jump out the airplane with him because that's what he does. And that's what we do in the film. But the film you can go to tickets.brothersafterwar.com.
Okay.
And you can see if the film's playing near you. And if it is, you can buy your tickets right there. Now, if you're a veteran or you're a first responder or you're a family member of one, you can go to VetTix. And at VetTix, the Gary Sinise Foundation has donated $150,000 to buy about 15,000 tickets for the first 15,000 that want to see it. The Gary Sinise Foundation wants to remove all obstacles. You asked, when is it playing? It's playing 4 times a day for 7 days in a lot of these theaters. Okay. And This promotion is the opening weekend. We really want the opening weekend to be a moment of camaraderie, celebration of our vets, a community event, a huge thank you to them for their service and their sacrifice, and for their families. Their families are included here in this as well. So that's why the Gary Sinise Foundation is saying, hey, go see the movie on us.
And I think I want to stress this, is how authentic this is. I'm sure veterans are used to this idea of, oh, there's a film, and they watch it and it's like they're seeing like 20, 30 mistakes and they're already like, okay, I'm turning this off. Not going to put up with it. I think, of course, Gary Sinise knows, his foundation knows, with your family and then all the work that you've put in to earn the trust of these people, this is as authentic as it gets. And it's something that you should be extraordinarily proud of, that you're putting out something not only, for the military story, but you're putting out a story that represents how people have lived their lives both at war and after war. I can't stress that enough, and let people know who are listening that you really made an authentic story that you should be very proud of. And it is that love letter to veterans.
Thank you for that. Just building on that, because everything you just said is absolutely correct. I know that sometimes when people make films about vets, they cherry pick a bunch of sad stories. The filmmakers doing their vet pick. Thanks for coming by. And it's like this sad story that that's it. That is not this film at all. This film is unique because I knew these people in the wars. They became my friends in Iraq. I was there with them. If they were getting shot at, guess what? So was I. And when I follow up with them between the 2 films, I've done workshops for 40,000 service members and their families. So since the last film ended, all I've been doing is helping our veterans walk through their trauma or maybe the impact on their family or their families, and help them make sense of that experience, journal about it, and then let's have a group conversation and let's talk about solutions. Let's talk about how we can not just survive, but thrive. So all of that went into this film. In the movie, this is an insider's look. This is a brother who's been at war with these guys coming back to these moments. And then we fast forward to the modern day. So we go from the foxhole to their living room. And in between, we really talk about how have they navigated that.
Right.
And there's a lot of humor, but there's also, the film gets serious. They talk about the loss of identity. They talk about losing friends. They talk, even some of them, shockingly, I don't want to give anything away, but someone very close to me even told me they came half a pound of pressure away from taking their own life. Right. And you can see my response, because this is a verité documentary. It happens in real time. The shock is real, I assure you. And I left all of that in the movie. I left my brother giving me a hard time, as most vets do with their family, right? I was like, okay, this is the reality, this is the truth. And because I wanted to give everyone an authentic portrayal, like really give them insider's insight and do something special. And a lot of the veterans told me they wouldn't have opened up like this if it wasn't for the fact that I was there with them 1,000%. In the war.
Yep.
And also that the purpose of it, as my brother Joe says, I'm telling you this in case it helps another soldier.
Yeah.
And so I think what makes this film unique is that. And then there's one other element. A good friend of mine, Noel Apanas, deployed 3 times and combat veteran and the whole 9 yards, told me, he said, this is our film. He said, usually when you watch a film, Hollywood makes something about heroes, Medal of Honor recipients,
or
in his words, zeros, people struggling, gutter, etc. And that's all vets. Yeah. And that pisses veterans off, because they're like, that's not all us. He said, your film is about us. This is the majority of vets, where, frankly, in my personal opinion, there is a little bit of a hero in those vets that volunteered to go to war after the towers came down. They volunteered, and then they went sometimes up to 13 times.
Yeah,
I mean, that's extraordinary. But the reality is, they were affected by those experiences. That was a huge experience, and trauma is not the entire entity of that experience. It's a piece of it. But they do have a little bit of a scar, a little bit of a wound. And it's important to talk about those things. And it's important for other veterans and family members to have those things discussed, because we find movies make tough subjects easier to talk about. And so I think the film is special because these are the guys I met. These are the friends I made on the front lines. And here they are 15 years later. Come and see, come laugh with us, come jump out of airplanes, let's go scuba diving, and then let's sit and have a real conversation about the emotional truth of their situation.
Incredible. Jake, what made you decide to do this and get into filmmaking? And what did your parents do to create so much resilience amongst your brothers, like to be able to go join the army and go into, I would argue this is some credit that you can use with I would argue what you did is harder, because at least deployed, I have my weapon. I can defend myself. You had a camera. What made you decide to do this?
That is said like a true veteran. And I've gotten on quite good with our veterans for many years because of that. They look at me and go like, bro, you had a camera. Like, what are you doing? They're like, you have my attention now. What did you want to talk about? The F word? My feelings? Okay, Jake, we'll talk about my feelings. Sure. You're 100% right. I grew up in Decatur, Illinois. I wanted to be in the service myself. My grandfather served in World War II. In the film, Joe and I go back to where he fought behind enemy lines with the Italian partisans, because Joe's now deployed to Italy. So I'd wanted to serve, and I wanted to be a fighter pilot. I thought that would be super cool. Maybe that's Top Gun's fault. But I knew when I saw Leaves for the first time at 7 when I put glasses on, that was never going to happen. So I went and said, I'll be an infantry officer. That'd be cool. So I applied to West Point, would have gotten in, but my eyes stink so bad they wouldn't let me. But then my brother Isaac went, and then Joe went. And my parents deserve a lot of credit. We had an American upbringing. My dad has always had reverence for the military, his father's service. He had wanted to go to Vietnam, but he finished medical school in 72, and he asked, and they said, we don't need you anymore. He's okay. So he's one of those patriotic Americans that's always supported our vets and been very interested in what's going on. So I was just very motivated to do something. The other element of this is, I got into the arts. I did a business internship. I went to Notre Dame. I did a business internship between sophomore and junior year. I went to Ireland my junior year.
Nice.
I did very well at the internship, but I came home on my couch in Chicago, Illinois, and I said, I made a company a lot of money today. So what? And it didn't spiritually fulfill me. So I went to Ireland. I discovered acting and writing. I did one play and had 6 lines in it. I did do, more significantly, some serious writing that got picked up, and I was getting into really sweet writing workshops with Sebastian Barry and folks like that. But just off of that small amount of experience, I'd fallen in love with telling stories. So of course I call my parents and tell them, look, I'm going to drop out of school after my junior year. I'm going to move to New York and be an actor. And they're like, what? And so we just were fighting, and there was transatlantic screaming matches and this, that, and the next thing. And then my dad got a letter that I wrote 3 weeks earlier, and he said, I've got your letter, Jake. I understand. And I go, at least there's hope for me as a writer. That was a 180 you just did there. I went to Chicago, and I started my career as an actor, and I did 18 plays professionally. And I met Gary Sinise once. I almost played Billy Bibbit in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. I came really close. Right. But it didn't happen, and then I moved to Chicago. I moved from Chicago to Los Angeles, and I got started at William Morris, and I started doing voiceovers. And then my brothers came home from Fallujah. Right. And that's when everything changed. They said, the truth is not getting home. And I said, as a brother, that just pissed me off. So I decided to do something about it. I took all the money I ever made. I got permission from the DOD, and I joined Isaac in Iraq. And that was my entry point. And then I'm old school, right? I felt like if you're at war, you got to do something to help. And so I put my whole entertainment career on hold, and I made that film. And then unexpectedly, we got it out. It played in 60 cities and around the world and on Showtime. So it did all those things. But then military couples came up to me and they said, we just had our first real conversation about his or her experience overseas after seeing brothers at war together. And I said, okay, that's unexpected and really valuable. And so I created a journal, and I showed the journal to Gary Sinise, and the next thing I know, I'm on military bases doing workshops, and now here we are 14 years later. I've done 40,000, I do 25 workshops a year. We've done 40,000 service members and their families, and now the Gary Sinise Foundation supports all of those. Wow. And also this new film. So I didn't know in 2004 when I flew out to see my brothers when they got home from Fallujah that I was going to spend the next 21 years making films about our service members, doing workshops for them, hearing their stories, helping them take a healing step forward. But it's just what ended up happening. And the other element of your question is this. A month before 9/11, my brother died. And he was 20. And it was drug overdose. And my brothers and I literally buried him. Joe, who was only 14 at the time, said, I want to bury him. So they put him in the ground. And his man, I get emotional thinking about it. Our 4 other brothers took shovels and we put the dirt on him. Oh, man. And I think in some ways I started Brothers at War because I know what a brother is worth. And I know how, when they're gone, sometimes you might have to tell a little girl what kind of man her father was. So I took that film on because I had experienced loss in my own life. And I thought, man, this is bigger than me. There's other families going through this. There's other people's brothers and fathers and sons overseas and sisters and daughters. And I need to go. I have the ability to do this. I have to do my part. So that's what motivated me to go to make that first film. And it was the guys I met along the way that inspired me to finish it. And then it's the people and the response to it that have kept me on this project for 20 years. And so this film is really not about me. This film is about the veterans. This is the veterans film. It's 12 veterans. I'm just the conduit. And my hope is that folks will just get to spend an hour and 45 minutes with some of what I think the most extraordinary people on the planet.
You're going to make me cry, Jake. That's incredible. And the other thing, it's about the veterans, but it's also about the family. So I think your niece in the film talks about something that I've always said. We know what we're doing. Like, we know when we're safe, when we're not. But the spouses don't know. They just know that there could be a knock on the door at any point that could upend their entire life. And you talk about that in the film, which is, it's such a touching film. From a documentary filmmaker standpoint, is there any advice that you have, like you traveled those 4 continents, is there any advice that you have to give filmmakers, like in terms of gear, in terms of preparation, to make things, looking back on that could have made things a little bit easier for you?
Don't make a film during the pandemic.
I noticed there was like one scene where you're just like, damn pandemic. And so did that make it a struggle to not get to Africa or like the places you wanted to go?
Are you kidding me? Listen, that's a movie into itself. It just was so off the topic of the veterans in the modern day that we had to like really leave it to the side. But let me tell you, we were the first film back on a military base.
Okay.
Think about how hard that is. To capture that moment when Isaac leaves to go to Tunisia, that was like, try to be the first to do anything with the DOD. Good luck. Secondly, Italy, we were the first film allowed back in Italy. Full stop. First film to film in Italy after the pandemic was this film.
Wow.
Tunisia was closed. To business, to travel, I had to reach out to a local producer who got in contact with the Ministry of Culture. They made an exception to us to get it into the country. Then I get in
Wow.
Paris and I got to book a certain hotel. I'm literally on hands and knees booking a hotel because it's the right hotel. And we're like, here, I booked the hotel. Can we get on the plane? We get on the plane. It's just crazy. My brother couldn't believe I made it. The military said that Jake Rademacher and Gary Sneeze Foundation did in 2 days what we couldn't do in 4 months. They just couldn't get us in there. And can you imagine that film without me in Tunisia, in the Coliseum with Isaac, reflecting on what's next and the service? I knew we had to get there to do it. So my first piece of advice is do yourself a favor. Don't make a film during a global pandemic, especially if you need to get out in the globe to do it. But other than that, in a more serious long-term aspect, because it's a great question, is I would tell a filmmaker this: get a pen out, get a piece of paper out, and ask yourself, why do you want to make this film? Then ask yourself, who would need to see it? Who would want to see it? Why would they care? And you focus in on that, because that's your reason for making it, and that's your audience. And you want to stay right on that. And that could determine a lot of things. Because a lot of times people don't make films because they put too big a scope. They don't think about who their core audience is. They don't think, oh, Mark Bowden wrote Black Hawk Down, he's my cousin.
Right.
In the first film, he said, Jake, don't ever forget, all you need is a camera, permission from the military, and a plane ticket. That really helped me, because it was like, okay, basics. I went beyond that. Thanks, Mark, for the advice. But I went beyond that. I took 4 guys, and I was one of the cameras, but we had 2 others. But he was right. Keep your eye on the ball kind of thing. The second thing is you make a plan. And just like in the military, you found no plan survives contact with the enemy. Right. But you do make a plan. You make, what do I want to do? How do I want to structure this? How does this film end? And then the film will surprise you, and you have to go with it as it goes. You can see in the film, there are scenes that I thought we were doing one thing, and it turned out to be something very different. Yeah. Whether it's an argument in a kitchen, whether Joe leaning into me and going at me about his feelings about Afghanistan. And by the way, he's predicting Afghanistan before.
I know, right?
2 years before.
Right.
Right. He was right. And I'm arguing with him. He was right. He is in 19 calling it. And so my advice, the last piece of advice I would say to filmmakers is this, is if you are signing up for a film, at the minimum, you're looking at 2 years. In the case of this film, 4 years. With the support of Gary Sneeze Foundation, 4 years, 5 years of your life, right? 6 years. I think I've been working on this project for 6 years. I've been both films and everything, 21 years.
Wow.
Make sure that you're taking something on that you're really passionate about, and that you want to have a voice in that space, and you want to say something that maybe hasn't been said before. Then it's worth it. Then it's the best experience you could ever do, to take it on and to go, but now you know what you want to talk about, and you know your why. You've mapped out who would care, and you've checked your commitment level and said, yeah, I'm all in. If I got to work 16-hour days, 6 days a week, I will do it, because this topic, these people I'm trying to get the film to, they're worth it. And I think I'm walking my talk, because as you can see in the movie, these are our people. I care about them. I almost lost my life making the first film. The second film, I left it all out on the field too.
Yeah, completely.
And the beautiful thing is, when you do that, then all of a sudden you get allies. You get your Gary Sneezes. You get this latest situation that's just come together quickly, where the Gary Sneeze Foundation's buying tickets with VetTix and Regal and AMC and Cinemark to be able to, wherever vets are, get them a free night at the movies with their family to see Brothers After War. I can't do that alone. Other people have to think, hey, what you're doing is important. We want to be a part of it. And so that's where lining those 3 things up before you get going is really valuable.
That's great advice. So it sounds like you've worked a lot with the DoD over the last 20 years. What has that experience been like? Because then, I don't know if you're familiar with the story behind Retrograde, but Matthew Heineman did a film on Afghanistan with 10th Group, and it got entered into the political maelstrom where he's not able to show it anymore because it got with some large interest. The Taliban almost got too caught up in it, to no fault of Matthew. So how did you manage that relationship? The other thing I'll say is this did not come across as like a recruiting video. So you didn't obviously give up control of the military. Let's make the military look great. It doesn't make the military look bad. It's just an honest portrayal. It's not like you didn't sell out to get your footage, is my point. So how did you manage that relationship over a couple decades? I'm sure there were bumps along the way, but it sounds like you managed it well to be able to tell this story.
Yeah, there were some bumps along the way, but look, I like Matthew. I know him.
Yeah.
His most recent film, I was actually asked to sit in with some filmmakers and give him some comments on it. So I did that. We have the same mixer. The mixer for his films is Tom Paul. He's the mixer for my film. Tom's great.
Cool.
So I was actually mixing this in Brooklyn with Tom. And it was Tom that brought me to that screening. Matthew Heineman's an important filmmaker. What you have to do with the military, though, and I've done it with this, is as they explained to me before I went to Iraq, they're like, we support freedom of the press. And in my case, I always have final cut. I had final cut of Brothers at War. I had final cut of Brothers After War. Even Gary Sinise signed off on that. That was up for debate. And I was like, I cannot ask my brothers and my friends to bare their souls and not control how that is shared with America. No way. I'm like, that was awesome, critical the first time, because believe it or not, your Joe out there would be like, I'm walking next to him on a mission and he's, so where are you from? CNN? And I'm like, I'm a filmmaker. What? I'm making a documentary. Really? I go, yeah. They're like, and I would say, I got final cut. They go, you do? Okay. You seem like a pretty good guy. You're out here with us. Here's what's going on. And I said, that's so powerful. I can't give that up. The DOD knew that. They had two things with me. They said, look, you cannot give away secret stuff before it happens.
Of course.
And every time I've made a film, that has been there's been a situation where, like in the first film, I knew missions that were going to happen before they happened, and I was asking to get in embeds, and they were like, I couldn't tell the public affairs officer I was asking for the mission from what the mission was, because I would have been like, OPSEC. I was like, no, it just ties into the film. It's really cool. Can you get me in there? And then by the time I get to Baghdad, the Delta forces attach themselves, and I'm like, oh, God, here we go. All right, what do you got? Oh, no one else wants this one. There's more IDs than anywhere else in Iraq. You want that, Jake? I'm like, yeah, send me there. This time, you know what happened this time? Just as a small aside. Yeah. So Joe's giving the briefing to Isaac. Okay, I think that's a critical scene in the film where the master sergeant is briefing the lieutenant colonel on Africa.
Yeah.
And I was like, my producing partner, Norman Powell, if you wrote that in a script in Hollywood, they would say that would never happen. So I said, we got to film that. We got to film that. You got to let me in the room to film that. They weren't totally sure that they were going to go to Africa or not. So they didn't want to give me permission to film. So I'm on a phone with a colonel, and I'm like, sir, if he doesn't go to Africa, I'll cut the scene. Okay?
Yeah.
But I'm telling you right now, if he does, we got to have this scene. This is insane. Come on. Yeah. I'm making a film with my brothers, and one is coming on military air to Columbus to brief him on the insurgency in the middle of Africa? Are you in Nigeria? How do I not cover that? So he's, okay, Jake. All right, we'll let you cover it. Just, don't release it before it happens. And I was like, okay, sir, no problem. And to their credit, they gave me permission. They let me come in. They let me film something that was confidential. And I lived up to my end, which was, they are more concerned about secrecy than image. The other thing that I did, and I don't know exactly the specifics with Matthew Heineman, what happened there, but I know for myself, the other thing is you make a deal where they get to see the film first before the rest of the public. So a couple of weeks ago, I called up Ken Hawes, who's in charge of public affairs for the Army for the Western region here. And the two of us sat and watched the film. We watched the film. And now Ken's a great guy. He's a veteran himself. He's a West Point grad. He served 24 years in the Army. He retired as a colonel. So he loved the film. He was just like, we talked about the film for 30, 40 minutes. I love it. And they didn't give me any hard time. There's moments in the film that maybe the military looks cool and sexy. They're doing helicopters and flying all over. But there's also real talk. There's real talk in the film. Veterans are speaking their minds. And this is, when you see the film, it's definitely not something the DOD wrote or scripted. This is Jake's point of view. And I think what ends up happening, though, once you build up a track record and some credibility, and you're like, I'm not coming in here with an axe to grind, but I have to tell the truth, and I'm here for the guys on the ground. I'm very clear. I am a brother, I'm a military family member, and I am here to give voice to our veterans and their families. And nothing's going to get in the way of that. That is my starting point, and we can have a conversation after that. If you're good with that, let's do this. If you're not, then find another filmmaker, because that's not what an audience is going to want, and that's not the contract I'm making with them. And to his credit, and I think to the military's credit, I think they really love the film because it's a documentary by Jake Rademacher, executive produced by Gary Sinise. And the stars of the film are real veterans talking about their real experience in the war. And not everything is rainbow and unicorns, So if we have a film where everybody's just talking rainbow and unicorns, what good does that do? Like, no,
Yeah.
how can you sustain the attention of an audience for an hour and 45 minutes if they feel like this is rubbish or this is glossy? And you can attest to the fact that I don't always look good in the movie. There's a lot of humor at my expense. The film starts with my brother Joe busting my chops to no end, and the audiences are laughing at that. They're loving it. And then we have a fight in the kitchen that I don't even know if it should be in the film or not, but I was like, but I've had military audiences say at that moment, I was like, okay, I see you guys are being real. This is authentic. This is real. You don't care if you look bad or your family looks bad. You're going to just be honest and truthful and let it all hang out there. And look, our vets like that. I think veterans have some of the best BS detectors in the world. So if you try to BS them, they know a mile away and they're going to flee. But if you are real with them and you're authentic and you speak truth, it's a different story. Then they're like, wow, that's my story. That's our story. There's even we released a little video about some veteran responses. And they say, this is real. This is authentic. 100%. This is our story. And I'll tell you why it was important to do that. One veteran who saw the film said, I'll never forget this. He said, the film made me feel like I'm not broken. Brothers After War made me realize I'm not alone, that it's okay to be vulnerable. It gave me hope for my future. To me, that's the standard I'm trying to hit. And if you can give a vet that experience, the good that a film can do is just unlimited. And it ripples beyond him to his or her to the family that surrounds them and loves them. And then they are able to like breathe a little easier and maybe have a nice conversation about something, and you get breakthroughs and all kinds of good stuff happens. And to me, that's more important than trying to hit a talking point of someone. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I'm servant to that as a filmmaker.
Right. It's simply incredible. And I don't think people realize how the ripple effect, exactly like you said. I remember the first two soldiers we lost at my unit, my first deployment, Cody Baker, Gil Morales, August 2011. And we had their ceremony on our little cop, but then you saw ceremonies of the families later on. And you just saw like a whole town show up for the funeral. And you think to yourself, like, that's two soldiers at one little base in Afghanistan, and that what has this outsized effect of what you're doing on some community in the United States. And it just shows you like how much like one person matters to thousands of other people. And I think that's what the great thing you're doing, is that you're allowing that one person to be able to have that conversation with a few others, and it comes closer to being able to understand what that experience was like. And I can't thank you enough. I've thanked you several times, but I guess I can't thank you enough for doing that, Jake. It's just incredible. So was there anything that you decidedly left out? Like you said, you know what, this is a bridge too far? Because I'm curious, like on these cinema verite documentaries, is there any advice you can give on things that like maybe you wouldn't do, or you would say for a filmmaker would be going too far?
It's interesting. My first cut of the film was 2 hours and 45 minutes. So obviously that would have been unsustainable. Phil Gurren is our executive producer.
I kind of want to watch that though, Jake.
Yeah, there's some merit. There's some interesting stuff. But Jake, you have an A through an F story going. You get two stories, A story, B story. The vet's the A story, you're the B story. That's it. I was like, okay, fine. So got it down to about 2 hours and screened it for Gary Sinise. And then we just kept recutting it. I think what I had to leave out of the film was my sister is now serving in the military, and we ended up making a beautiful short film.
How are your parents handling this, Jake?
I don't know. You know, my dad went to go see where his father fought in World War II, and that was in the film, and now that's becoming its own separate film, which has taken an incredible shape. That had to leave the film. Because, you know, what we discovered was the film really had to stay on track and stay on topic. Right. It's really about the veterans' experience. And so it had to stay true to like then and now and then and now. And when we did that, audiences were really ready to go on the ride. So I didn't really cut anything that I really felt was essential. In fact, I would say the opposite. I think I defended the things that I felt like just had to be in there. And it was for good reason. I had veterans come up to me that saw the film in early screenings when we were getting some feedback, and they said, thank you, we have feelings and thoughts about this stuff, and thank you for keeping that in the film, because it makes us look like we're intelligent and we have feelings about what's happening and thoughts. We can't always talk about it to the public because we're wearing the uniform, but that doesn't mean we're not fully alive and fully in these moments and affected by them. I would say that I actually kept all the stuff in there, whether I should have or not, that I felt was essential and important and authentic. It's a great question. And some of those other those things that we just couldn't include because the film would have been too long, we're going to start to release those as short films, maybe on the DVD, or we're going to release them separately on our YouTube channel, Brothers After War YouTube channel.
Okay.
Anything that was extra will get released eventually. But I would say that we did the opposite. I will say this, because you asked a good question about advice. I would tell you, I'm not going to give it away because I'm going to let people come and see it. But with Chris McKay's story, he was incredibly vulnerable. He's just riveting to listen to and to be a friend of, and his story's so important. There's some stuff that he reveals in the film, and Gary had us screen the film at the headquarters for the vets who are featured in the film first, so they could see the film before the rest of the world. And I sat next to Chris. And afterwards, I talked to Chris, and I said, Chris, are you okay with everything in the film? And he said, yeah. And I said, Chris, I'm going to tell you right now, I'm working with vets a long time. If you're okay with it, it's going to help a lot of vets, like a lot of vets, you being so authentic and sharing so much. But you're the only one who I will seriously consider if you don't want that in the movie. And he said, I'm okay with it, Jake. I'm okay with it. You did very respectfully put that in there. And yeah, I know it'll help a lot of vets, so let's just keep it in there. That's one thing I would say, is that if you're going to make a documentary and you got to cut to the bone, but you also got to keep sight of these are real people. These are their stories. These are their lives. And you may want to share it with them and make sure that they're good with you being so real and so authentic. And if you do that, then you have them as your advocate and champion. Then you've empowered them to speak on behalf of themselves and the film and the issues that it raises, and use it to help other people. And so that's the piece of advice I would give to other filmmakers, is you can stay true to yourself, you can keep your integrity and your final cut and all that stuff, and I've done that. But be conscious of someone like Gary Sneese's thoughts and ideas, and maybe try to incorporate, at least experiment with them. That's what I did. He thanked me for being so collaborative. And then pay attention to the people whose story you're telling, and make sure that they're on board as possible with everything you're revealing about their life, because they're a real person.
Phenomenal. So have you considered making a narrative film regarding the military and veterans? Most narrative films are, quite frankly, not great. They don't pass that test, like you said. Like, there'll always be a moment in there where it's, come on. And it's just really tough to go watch them for that reason. A, have you considered that? And then B, do you think like documentaries are really where it's at, where veterans can see something that resembles what they've lived through?
I tried to make this documentary like a feature film.
Right.
Canon sponsored me as a filmmaker. They loaned me $50,000 in glass.
Nice.
The Gary Sneese Foundation was very accommodating for me, wanting to travel around the world and jump out of airplanes and go scuba diving. So I tried to make this like a really big film documentary. It's in 4K, surround sound, the whole 9 yards. I definitely am going to start to do narrative stuff next. And one of the projects I'm working on is with a POW from Vietnam, the one who served longer than anyone else over there. He and I have been talking for about a year, and I've been developing a project with him that I think would be really great, and is probably best told in the kind of thing you're talking about. I hear you, and I feel like I'm starting to get that request. I'm starting to get pulled by our community and go, hey, why don't you do some narrative stuff? And the answer to your question is absolutely. I'm going to do a couple of other films as well.
Okay.
And then I would say about half my time will continue, because we got a team of fantastic trainers. They're all veterans, leading our seminars and workshops. So we're going to do seminars and workshops for decades to come, at least 25 a year, maybe 40, maybe 50. But at the same time, I'm going to start to make some new films. And right now, the projects I'm working on are narrative.
Okay,
so
great.
Right now, that's what's up next.
But I've heard it's like they won't do well internationally. They can't find like all these really weird logistical reasons why they don't have it. And then the other part of it, Jake, that really gets me is that and I know that it's some producers saying I got to relate to the audience, but it's always just like a Navy SEAL and a Special Forces guy. It's like, I get it, but like the vast majority of military members don't have that experience. So it's, come on, just show like, a regular guy doing it. So I'm hopeful that you're able to do it. In fact, kind of reminded me, maybe you'll do like Richard Linklater type series. The Before series is like, there's another brothers like in the VA, and like we do it like 15 years from now, and they're like dealing with all this other. I think it would be, hopefully you're open to it. Hopefully the guys are open to continuing their story about what it's like in 20 years from now.
Brothers After War 3, yeah. Listen, it's possible. I would definitely be down to do that. This longitudinal study looking at somebody over a 15-year period of time. I'm not sure it's ever happened in the military, or definitely not on such a grand scope. Listen, this weekend is important, and I'll tell you why. This is the largest release of a war starring real veterans talking about their experience probably ever, at least back to World War II. If people show up, if our community mobilizes and watches the film together and talks about it and shares it with their friends, Hollywood will notice and they'll go, oh, I guess maybe if you make a film about a documentary where somebody actually knows what they're talking about and actually is a family member or a vet or really does a great job, they'll come see the film. There's a market there. There's a community. There's an ecosystem. Let's make some more. Because to date, they haven't done it. To date, they've picked sad stories or outsiders make films about our communities, and it hasn't done so well. So Hollywood goes, it's got sand in it. It won't sell. Oh, vets. No one wants to go see that. And that's the reality. So part of what we're trying to do is kick the door down for all the other filmmakers that are out there that are veterans that want to tell their stories. And if Gary Sinise and I and you and everybody that listens to you can't do it, I don't know who can.
Right.
But I want to tell Hollywood, listen, if you tell the real story of our veterans and their families, they will come. You can't be inauthentic. You can't fake it. You can't not listen to them before you make your film. It's got to be real and authentic. It turns them off when something's wrong. To them, it means you don't care. But if you show them you care, if you really want to tell their story, you want to do the best job you can. It doesn't have to be perfect, but they can see you left it all on the field. They will embrace the film, and it'll be incredibly helpful for them, and we need more movies like this. So 100% I want to make more films for our community that they really respond to and enjoy, and we can do that as narratives as well. But I'm going to tell you, this is critical. For people that care about that genre and want more films like this, I just hope this works. And I think that's a small reason behind the Gary Sinise Foundation trying to remove all the barriers for our vets with vet ticks to come and see the film, is we want more movies like this. We want this to be a first of a series of films about our veterans and their families. And so we're doing our best to just try to pave a path through the jungle and make this a reality. Christians, they come and see their films, and they've got now a community of Christian filmmakers who some of them do incredible work. And they now have people telling their stories, and they have a place to go where they can gather and see films. And I'd love to see our community have a very similar set of filmmakers, some filmmakers that we trust, that really get it, that do a good job. Maybe they were there in the war zone with us and they continue to make films for us. In the community, folks like yourself say, hey, this is one you need to see. This one's the real deal. Go check it out. And if we can build that, I think then we can see more films that vets go, yeah, that's my story. I like that. That makes me feel good. That's great for my family to go watch with me. Starts conversations. I actually think it's a very important piece of the entire mission. And if you go to tickets.brothersafterwar.com, tickets.brothersafterwar.com, and you don't see your theater, go and tell them, hey, can you play this film? And reach out to us at info@brothersafterwar.com, and we will do our best to bring the film to you. The Gary Sinise Foundation is trying to get this film to everybody that needs it. And there's no way to do that if we don't invade and take over the cultural mainstream. So that's what we're doing. America can focus on Kim Kardashian and all this other stuff, and that's fine. But I think the guys who laid it on the line for 20 years, I think they deserve the spotlight for a minute. I think their story deserves to be told, and I think we as a community want to invite our fellow citizens to take an hour and 45 minutes and see, feel, hear, walk a mile in their shoes. And I think if we do, what I've heard is they'll say, I had no idea, and that experience touched me. So that's my final thought.
Love it. One last, a little bit off the wall question, Jake, but this is an indie film podcast. Love hyping other people's projects. You sound like you're a collaborative filmmaker. Is there a filmmaker or film that you wish more people knew about?
Oh, it's so good.
Something you love.
I obviously loved Repo.
Yeah.
I was and met the guys after they premiered it in LA, and I was hoping to work. One of them lost his life covering war correspondence. His emails came up recently. Those guys are incredible. There's a film
That's a
that
great
came
one.
out about our chaplains around Veterans Day, and some people saw it in the movie theaters, and I think it's coming out soon. That's a really great film. The name of it is escaping me right now, but it's
Okay.
a chaplain helped make the film. I think it's got a celebrity endorsement, and it's a great film. It's about chaplains that have served from World War II to modern day. And I was invited to a private screening of it before it got released, and I was like, man, this is a powerful film. And that filmmaker was a chaplain who served overseas and then
Okay.
continues to now be a filmmaker and tell the story of our veterans and stuff. And he's a great guy and a very good filmmaker. And I think it's inspiring to learn more about what our chaplains have done and who they are over the last 50, 60 years.
And there's some badass chaplains out there. I remember at my last unit I served, and there was a Ranger Tab chaplain. I'm like, all right, this is where we're keeping the great chaplains. There are some, and I also saw, so there was a shortage in priests. So this was like 2018 in Kandahar, but I saw like a guy who was a Catholic priest in New York City. He was like mid 70s, and I'm like, what are you doing here? But there was a shortage of like Catholic priests. But I think that's a fantastic story. Jake Rademacher, the film is Brothers After War. Go see it this weekend. It's phenomenal. It's authentic. I loved every minute of watching it, and only to be outdone by being able to talk with you about it. So thanks so much for joining me on the podcast.
Thank you, Ben, so much for having me. Thank you for your service. And thank you for continuing to use your platform to talk about these stories that really matter. It's very important. And I'm delighted that you offered me the opportunity to come and talk to you about a project that's obviously very personal and has really consumed my life for the last couple of decades.